Hey, what's up? I'm Ofosu Jones-Corte.
And I'm Leah Santa Cruz. We're the meditation coaches on the Balance app.
And this is our weekly show, Well Balanced, where we explore ways to live a healthier, happier life.
And I am curious for us to talk about taking leaps of faith. I had this voice message I recorded because we do that for this show sometimes. And it's from a year ago almost. And it was a really pivotal moment right before I made a big decision. So let's just listen to that. And then we can talk about how it turned out and what it makes us think about those big leaps of faith that we have taken in our life.
Sounds good.
I'm sitting out in the grass and the sun is shining down on me and I'm just taking a lovely break, thinking about what's next in life. I'm at an interesting crossroads where I can choose to go back to Bali or continue on living in another location somewhere in the world, and I don't quite know where that is yet. And so I'm just contemplating that these times in life that are these crossroads where there's big decisions ahead, how incredibly pivotal these moments are, because I can think about moments in my life in the past when one decision just changed completely the course of my life and the people that I met. And so I'm weighing this decision now, and I think about what is the inner guiding force and how can I listen to it more carefully.
Yeah, so, when I listen to that, it almost sounds like you're on a pier looking at two different ships and thinking like, which ship am I going to take? I can see you on the edge of making this huge decision and going on an adventure.
Yeah, in those moments, I lean into what feels like it's going to either bring the most joy or what gives me the most energy or what gives me the most peace.
Yeah.
Or just simply what am I desiring the most, So it's a really deep in time of listening to myself and what my needs are and what my desires are and what's important to me.
Is that the process you went through when you were making this decision? Because by this time in your life, you've had a lot of practice with your meditation practice, with your own inner work. So yeah. I wonder if you had easy access to those tools to help you make this decision.
Yeah, a lot easier now. I mean, I've certainly made decisions in the past that were a lot more difficult for me to make and that I was a lot more scared going into because I wasn't sure how to trust myself or how to listen so deeply to myself. I mean, meditation's been, the years of meditation has really taught me how to do some of that deep listening and that discernment.
How did it turn out for you? We're now here in the aftermath.
I can't leave you hanging, right?
Right. The suspense.
My husband and I did decide, instead of going back to Bali, that we would continue traveling the world. And we did so for another 4 months, actually. And it turned out to be a really great decision that we did that, because we ended up seeing many more family members. We ended up going to Mexico and getting a surgery done there for my son. We found a really incredible surgeon for his cleft palate surgery. We ended up going to a friend's wedding that we wouldn't have been able to do had we gone back to Bali. And, this decision worked out really well. And sometimes big decisions don't always work out well immediately. Makes me think about when I started teaching meditation, shall I say. You know my backstory, but for those who don't, I left a really great job that I had with Microsoft and a career in one direction to totally switch gears and say, I want to work in wellness. I want to help individuals. And, you always hear this saying the nets will catch you, take the leap of faith and the net will catch you, or the universe will take care of you. And now you could look at me and go, oh, well, that certainly was the case. The net caught her. She's successful. But there is a gap of years in between where you didn't see the times where I thought, maybe I made the wrong choice. Maybe this isn't working out for me. I'm not cut out for this. There were some really difficult times where the money wasn't there for certain. And so you could look at me those times and say, well, she certainly went backwards a few steps.
Yeah. I feel like the subtext of this conversation is like taking a leap of faith and then not sticking the landing. And, what happens when that happens, or when you feel like that's what's happened.
Yeah.
That uncertainty is all part of the leap. I mean, for me, I was in Miami. I was working as a paralegal, pursuing my career in music. So I really had put I had put all my hopes and dreams into, becoming an artist, a successful rapper, musician, singer, etc. And I was in Miami. I had met with the owner of an independent label, and they were doing very well. And they were like, "Yo, what are you making right now at your job?" And I was like, "I'm making this." It's like, "Well, we can basically give you a stipend in advance that's equal to what you're making at your job so that you can focus completely on music." And I was like, this is a total dream come true. So I quit my job like right then and there. And my dad called and he was, concerned, and it was a whole lot of stuff. I definitely got a lot of pushback from certain sectors of the family group, but my wife was super supportive, and it was like getting paid the same money to do my dream. Incredible. So it stayed this way for a year or so. And then something unforeseen happened and the financing just ended abruptly. 1 year into making this move, everything fell apart. And that's when it was like, oh, this is the leap. What am I going to do now? How am I going to take care of my family? And I feel like a failure. I've banked everything on this, and I've stepped away from my paralegal job. And it was scary for sure. You could definitely look at my career as an artist and an author and a teacher now and say like, yeah, it all worked out. But for years, it did not feel that way.
Well, that's lovely. Because, for example, when I took a leap of faith, I took a huge pay cut.
Yeah.
I was making, 6 figures a year at my job, which was like really, really hard to leave something like that.
Sure.
And then I ended up jumping, into teaching meditation as a beginning teacher. I was making only 15% of what I was making before.
I mean, it
was very scary.
That's what I was going to say. It must have been scary.
So that there was like a lot of moments when I found myself, broke at moments and going, oh my gosh. And I remember my first workshop that I ever organized my very first workshop together with someone, and I put the flyers out and really made all this effort and no one showed up. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, like this is not easy. This is hard.
Yeah. It was devastating for me in this particular instance because it went from everything to complete zero. And then it was just like, wow, and then I had just had a baby, right? Everything was so secure in my mind. I thought that, okay, well, if we want to have another kid, let's have one. So I had a whole nother kid during this time. And then it all came crashing down. So it was extremely scary. And then to then decide like, I'm going to still pursue this. I'm never going back to that old life because I felt like I was dying in that other space. My uncle told me once, like, you're sitting in the paralegal seat. There's somebody out there who really wants to be a paralegal, and half the day you're being a paralegal, you're like trying to get your music career off the ground. Like you're sitting in somebody else's seat, you know? And then at the same token, you're not honoring your true ambition. So like for you, like what kept you going? Because for me, having tasted like the freedom of just living the life that I wanted to live, and then knowing that I'm going to die at some point, and do I want to die doing something that I don't want to do? Or do I want to die trying at least? And like, what example do I want to leave for my children? That you should like compromise your core beliefs for pragmatism, or that you should like take risks for the things that you love.
Yeah.
So yeah, what kept you going?
What kept me going, just like you, is like recognizing it's like sort of you only live once.
Yeah.
Well, I only live once that I know about for sure.
Yeah, that we know about.
And I want to ensure that I live a life full of meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And and I knew that I wasn't getting the results out of the life that I had chosen before. And I was not happy there. I didn't feel healthy. I didn't feel like I was making a contribution to the world in a meaningful way. And so for me, the sacrifices of having to be resourceful and the stress and worry about, money at times, or about the uncertainty of not having the guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, there's no real guarantee, but like the perception of a guarantee.
Yeah, exactly.
All of this was a sacrifice I was aware of in the beginning, and I had really great people around me to help me set my expectations, to tell me, hey, you know what? You might be scraping up the bottom for a couple years, and this is your time to kind of have a safe place to fail. And you don't have a huge audience or huge classes, and that's okay, because in the beginning you're still working out your kinks, you're still learning how to have presence, you're still learning how to be a teacher. And so it's actually good that you don't get all the success right off the bat, because if you got too much success right away, you wouldn't know how to handle it, and you'd probably cave from the pressure.
Yeah.
And so, it's like slowly working yourself up is actually a part of the process, and it teaches you the lessons and skills that you need to be able to handle the bigger things.
Yeah.
So I heard that, and I really took it to heart, and I said, okay, well, I'm just going through the grind, and it didn't make it easy.
Yeah.
It made maybe a little bit easier to stick to it, but it didn't make it easy. At the end of the day, it just was trusting my own resourcefulness and knowing and being really aware that if I'm persistent, then good things will come from it.
Jay-Z has this quote, like, the genius thing that we did is that we never gave up.
Yeah.
That was when he talks about Rockefeller, his record label was rejected. So he to think that Jay-Z, right, was like rejected flat out, outright, by the entire music industry. And so he had to like start his own record label and like gamble on himself, and then like to be one of the most successful artists of all time. Mm-hmm. But when you ask like what was the key to it, of course he's talented, of course this and that, but he was like where we really excelled was in our perseverance and persistence. Mm-hmm. And I think what happened for me when everything fell apart was that I threw myself into creating more. I had nothing else to do. I just went to the studio and made hundreds of songs, and they were meaningful because they were coming from a place of like recognizing the uncertainty of life, and they were meaningful, they were aspirational, there was better music. It wasn't like I had been handed this opportunity and now I'm just living my life. It was like, oh shit, everything fell apart, now what do I do? And I found a lot of joy and meaning in being able to just create during that period of treading water, trying not to drown. I feel like these two stories that we are talking about are like raw origin stories. And over time, we've probably developed skills to help us navigate successive leaps of faith. And I had done enough work learning to identify what really matters to me. So it's not like it's not a job that matters. It's like what the job means.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is on the edge of taking a leap of faith, and how to identify whether it's time to take that leap, whether they're leaping into the right thing? Like, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, take the big decision aside for a moment, whatever it is that's in front of you, and then just ask yourself the questions like, what's the most important to me in my life right now? What can you come up with, like 3 or 4 words that really symbolize for you, crystallize what is most important? Because if we make decisions based on just, money, for example, that's not enough.
Yeah.
We always have to ask ourselves that deeper question of like, well, why? Why do I want to do this beyond the money? So you can continue to ask deeper questions like, why do I want to have greater income so that I can take care of my family? Okay, well, why is that important to me? So that they're healthy and happy. Okay, why is that important to me? Well, because I want to, be able to live a life where I'm seeing the world with them. And okay, well, why is that important to me? Well, and you might get down to something like freedom. Mm-hmm. I just had to do this a couple months ago. And I identified what are my values now at this point in my life. And it's family, like quality time with my family. It's my physical and mental well-being, like what gives me peace of mind and health of my body. And it's what brings me joy. So those three things are really most important to me right now. And of course, there's things like, profitability, being financially free. That's also kind of a following forth. But what do I see for myself? And once I have those things, then I can go back to that decision that's in front of me.
Right.
And go, okay, let's do a quick check of like, let's just assume I make this decision and I stay in this job. What's going to be, how is this decision going to play out towards all of those values? Like, is it bringing me joy? Is it contributing to me spending time with my family? Is it contributing to peace in my mind and heart? And if I can quickly see that the answer is no on most of them and it pulls me farther away from those goals, then I can go, okay, well, maybe that's not the best decision at this time, even though it seemed enticing.
Yeah.
And then look over here at these different paths. So that can sort of be a way to help that decision making and taking that leap of faith. And sometimes the leap of faith can seem scary, but you can really see how that has the potential to work out in your favor of all those goals. And then you go, okay, I'm going to trust the process of what happens and not have to figure out right now how it's going to work out, but just trust that it can move me toward these goals.
Knowing that the leap you're taking is in the direction of what matters most to you is, makes it a joyful leap no matter how you land.
Yeah.
Because there's so many other directions you could move into. And if those directions are not in line with what's in your heart, then all of those are misdirection. So for me right now, family, my spiritual liberation, creativity and abundance, those are like core values for me. It also takes the edge off of it having to be one thing. Whatever it is I do, as long as it supports, enhances, or contributes to those core values, I'm happy to do it. And I don't need to identify myself as an artist or as a teacher or as an anything, because I'm just alive.
And I like the explorations that it leaves. And I hope that you're listening and thinking about what are those words that you most value, what crystallizes your values at this point in your life, and letting that be an inner guidance system for you in all of the decisions and leaps of faith. And sometimes a leap of faith is saying no to things. So let that be your map, your roadmap. Hey, and if you're not watching this podcast yet, make sure to go check us out on YouTube. Our channel's called Balance, and we've got a link to today's episode in the show notes. Or if you're on Spotify, you'll see our video when you're playing the episode in the app.
And please rate and review the show, whether you're watching or listening. And we love hearing from you, and it really helps us spread the word.
And we're going to be back next week. Until then, have a beautiful week.
Don't forget to be kind to yourself. Take care, y'all. Peace.
Ciao.